In this lesson, we are going to learn how to work out the midpoint and the length of a line. We will look at 3 scenarios for the midpoint. When we have an accurate graph, when we have a sketch, and when we have 2 coordinate points given. Looking at the first scenario, at the pink line, joined by points A and B, -4, 7 and 2, 7, we can see that it has 6 units across, and it's a perfectly horizontal line. Halving that is 3, so our midpoint will be -1, 7. Notice that the y coordinate hasn't changed because it's a horizontal line, and anywhere on this line the y will stay 7. Now let's look at the yellow line. We can see that the x-axis stays the same. The x-coordinate is 7 for both of these points, 7, -4 and 7, 5, and if you pick any point on this line, the x will stay 7. So we already know half the solution of the midpoint. The x-coordinate is 7. Let's figure out what the y-coordinate is. The length goes from -4 all the way to 5. That is 9 steps. Half of the 9 is 4.5. So we are going to move up 4.5 starting from this point E. This coordinate point will be 7 and 0.5. To work at the midpoint of the blue line, we're gonna first go across along the x-axis and up along the y-axis. So we have moved 4 steps across and 5 steps up. We're gonna halve our distances across and up, and then we will have 2 across and 2.5 up. We can read this coordinate point off. We have -1 and 0.5. If you look at the relationship between the numbers, we can see that the x started at -3 and ended up at 1. If we add these 2 and half it, that will be -2/2, which is equal to -1. And notice that's exactly what we have here, a -1. And then if we do the same with the y coordinate, we have -2 plus 3. Half that, we will have 1/2, which is 0.5. And that's exactly what we have for the midpoint. Therefore, to find the midpoint of 2 coordinate points, x1, y1 and x2, y2, all we have to do is add the x's and halve them, and add the y's and halve them. And this is the same thing as averaging the values of x and averaging the values of y, or find out the mean of the x's and the mean of the y's. To work at the midpoint of a line when a sketch is given, the formula for the midpoint is gonna come in really handy. Let's look at the orange line. For the coordinate points E and F, -5, 12 and 18, 12. Well, we can see that the y coordinate will stay the same. That's gonna be 12. Looking at the x coordinates of the line and following the formula, we have -5 plus 18 divided by 2 equals 13 divided by 2, and that is 7.5. The midpoint of EF is 7.5 and 12. Looking at the green line, to go from point A to point B, we can go horizontally and then vertically along the y-axis. From -2 across, we arrive to 20, and from -8 up, we arrive to 3. So we need to halve the x root. From -2 to 20, we made 22 steps. Half of the 22 is 11. 22 minus 11 is 9. And halving the y root is 5.5. Going from -8 up 5.5, we have to add 5.5 to -8, and that will give us, that is equal to -2.5. The midpoint of the green line is 9 and -2.5. Looking at the purple line, if we go along the y-axis and along the x-axis, let's find out what this coordinate point is. The x will stay the same, that is -15, and the y is -1. So going from 12 to -1, that is 13 steps. Going from -15 to -4, that is 11 steps. Halving the 13 steps, that is 6.5. Halving the 11 is 5.5, which takes us to the midpoint of CD. Minus 4 minus 5.5 is equal to minus 9.5, that is our x-axis. If we start at 12, going downwards, we have 12 minus 6.5, which is 5.5. To work at the midpoint when 2 points are given, we can now use the formula x1 plus x2 divided by 2, y1 plus y2 divided by 2. So looking at the last line that we have done, add the x values, divide by 2, add the y values, divide by 2, which will give us minus 19 over 2, 11 over 2, and this is equal to exactly as we have worked out in our diagram. To work out the length of this line, we can consider this as being a right angle triangle. So the length of CD, which is formed by the points minus 15, 12 and minus 4, minus 1. We can consider this triangle that we have just drawn up above with the dimensions 13 and 11 and x. To work out the x, all we have to do is use Pythagoras' theorem. X squared is equal to 13 squared plus 11 squared. X is equal to square root of 13 squared plus 11 squared. This will give us 169 plus 121, which is 17.03 to 2 decimal places. To work at the length of a line joining two coordinate points, as we have seen in the previous example, we can use Pythagoras' theorem. Now what we're going to do is generalize it in this example and use the formula. First of all, I'm going to start by labeling the points x1, y1, x2 and y2. The length will be given, as we have seen in the previous example, the square root of x2 minus x1 all squared plus y2 minus y1 all squared. And actually, even if you swap these, if you would do x1 minus x2 instead and y1 minus y2 instead, you will still get the same result. Minus 10 minus 6 all squared plus 7 minus 5 all squared. Minus 16 squared is positive 256 plus 2 squared is equal to 4, and this is 260, which will give us 16.12 to 2 decimal places.